Game day's here, I can hear the crowd. Turn on the lights, fans are cranked up and loud. Red or blue, we wear it proud. Yeah, we love our teams in this border town. Chiefs and Royals, Boo Mizzou, Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, KU. Hear that drum pounding in your feet. Yeah, you're marching to the beat of KC.
What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lucas Murphy, and I have the pleasure of bringing you Josh Fan from Show Me Football right after a Kansas City Chiefs victory over the Washington Commanders. But Josh, before we dive in too much into this game, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well, Lucas. I mean, we're coming off another Chiefs win, back-to-back wins. Is that the first time this season that they've had back-to-back wins? I could be wrong, but hey, look, we're stacking W's in that win column now. That's what this team needs to do. And you got another tough test coming up next week, but I think it's good that this team is continuing to stack good performances and build their confidence.
For sure. And speaking of confidence, because you always like to literally set the topic on a tee for me, and I appreciate that. The Kansas City Chiefs really kind of seemed to not have confidence, and they were lacking a lot of just seemed like ability in this first half. Can you kind of just talk through your thoughts? Because I created a video and I kind of talked about how from both perspectives, as a Chiefs fan and as a Commanders fan, it really just was like stagnated, like weirdness, like the way the game was just transpiring really in the first quarter and it bled into the second quarter. It was just a weird game. And what were your thoughts, in that first half?
Yeah, I mean, for a moment there, I was kind of worried that maybe it's one of those weird games where the Chiefs mess around and maybe find a way to lose or just a really ugly win. But I think it was one of those games where the Chiefs look at who's on the other side and they see a team that's kind of been disappointing this year that is down their starting quarterback, and they think they can just roll their helmets out there and win. But as the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to realize, you're everyone's Super Bowl, right? And Washington was giving you their all-out effort tonight, especially defensively. They had guys flying around for them. But then once the Chiefs figured, okay, we have to try a little bit, then they flipped the switch and they were able to put this game away relatively easily.
For sure. And yeah, it seemed very stagnated. I mean, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs turned the football over, and then you have the Washington Commanders turn it over on downs twice. They're going into halftime. It's tied 7-7, and it just really felt like you said, one of those games where maybe they were looking past the Commanders and kind of mentally thinking about the Bills. I don't want to think that's what the case was, but it just kind of had a vibe of like almost like overlooking, really. And so I do think Andy kind of had a mindset going into halftime, how he was going to address the team. They interviewed him right before, and something I talked to you about off screen was the fact that it seemed Andy was really irritated, and it rightfully so. I mean, this team just did not get the ball going. That turnover, that interception to Hollywood Brown where Marshawn Lattimore, I don't know if it was ball placement or if it was just a great play by Lattimore, but, that happens. But then you have the Travis Kelce deflection into Bobby Wagner. Like, that was just, even us, we were texting on the side, like, what the, typical Travis Kelce type of play kind of thing. But he turned it around. Really, I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you in the overall game, what really stood out to you in a very, very positive way? And I think you and I might be on the same page, but I want to see how you answer that. So what really stood out to you in a very positive way?
For as much criticism as I've given this defensive line, I thought they got a lot of pressure tonight. Now, granted, Washington's offensive line, a little beat up right now, and maybe that had a lot to do with it, but this was a defensive line that we've been ragging on all season, and they just lost Omar Norman-Lott, who is one of their young up-and-coming pass rushers, and I thought they put out an encouraging performance tonight. But I also don't want to move on from your question, Lucas, without just throwing in the fact that this offense looks awesome again. And yeah, I've already mentioned in the opening monologue, per se, about how they kind of flipped that switch, and they did that tonight, and that's not really an ability that they've had for a long time, but you saw it tonight, finally, where the Chiefs are like, okay, like, it's like the the meme with the guy with the video game controller and he leans forward and he's focused now. It's like the Chiefs can do that. And they're just like, yeah, we're better than you. And this is what we're going to do.
For sure. No, I agree. I think we're right dead smack bullseye on the same thing. I think the defensive line really kind of had an impressive showing. George Karlaftis had a sack. Mike Dana, I mean, a guy that we're kind of critical at times. Mike Dana had, I believe a sack. I could be wrong with the sack, but I know for sure he had the interception. Yeah, he did.
He had a sack.
Did.
Yep.
Big time sack. Yeah. He came up clutch. We saw George Karlaftis get a sack, which, kind of helps out when people are complaining about that contract. When he's contributing in the sack category, it really kind of, answers that question of should we have paid him or should we not have. But for me, I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me was this running attack. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, he did, carry the football. I think he had roughly 30 yards. But the fact that you really kind of had a dual-headed monster in the backfield with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt really kind of getting after it and, getting contributions that we may not have seen up to this point this year. And so really, what were your thoughts on the running attack?
Well, I mean, it looked good. And Kareem Hunt, can we talk about him? I mean, he kind of turned back the clock a little bit tonight. I mean, he always has kind of helped out in the red zone and in short yardage, but he also was ripping off some long runs tonight as well. And he looked explosive, and that was kind of surprising given the fact that he was limited or either not practicing for most of this week with his injury from the Raiders game. And I just want to point out the fact, Lucas, that I thought this was going to be a game where Brashard Smith finally broke out. I started him in fantasy, and I was deciding between him, Kamani Vidal of the Chargers, RJ Harvey of the Broncos, and Kareem Hunt. All three of them went off over Brashard Smith, who did absolutely nothing. And I am livid, but also happy that the Chiefs running backs are showing signs of life.
For sure. And I talked about it in my video. If Brashard Smith, there was a holding call on Rashee Rice. If he didn't get that holding call, I think they would have really leaned into Brashard Smith a little more. He had, that play went for about 12 to 15 yards.
Yep.
And obviously had to come back because Rashee Rice was holding. But there were some definitely bright spots with Brashard Smith. And I think that's the intriguing thing about this offense is if one guy's just not really... It looked like Pacheco was kind of stagnant a little bit in that first quarter, and they really started to lean heavy into Kareem Hunt. And I think when you look at this offense from a bigger picture, that's what you really want is if one guy's just not contributing, you got to be able to rely on somebody else. And that was a significant thing. And I'm really excited that, not only did Kareem Hunt rush for a touchdown, he caught a touchdown. We, like you said, we rewinded time a little bit. We saw the burst back and Pacheco to kind of have that mentality of kind of that endless motor that he has. He did kind of sustain an injury. He came out very late in the game, but it didn't look like it really affected him too much. He was about to ready to go back out there, and I think they told him to just, hey, take it easy. But I was really impressed, man. And the one thing, too, I want to highlight, and obviously we talked a little bit about Travis Kelce and the interception, but he breaks the record, or not really a record, but he has 100 touchdowns, 100 career touchdowns. Travis Kelce almost eclipsed 100 yards tonight. He was, Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes' primary target. What were your thoughts on Travis Kelce?
Yeah, so after the deflected pass that became an interception, I immediately tweeted out on the Show Me Football Twitter. I said, Travis Kelce just has kind of been a net negative for the last 12 months in his Chiefs career. And that's not to say that he hasn't helped this team in some ways and that he can't still help this team. But if you look at the totality of how Travis Kelce's performed in the last 12 months, including that Super Bowl performance, he's been a net negative for the Chiefs. They've lost some games directly because of some of the things he's done out on the field. But it was nice to see him bounce back and find some of that swagger because it feels like more often than not, you've been able to knock Travis Kelce off his mental game a little bit easier, in the last few years. But to see him come back and have the performance that he did after what became an interception because he couldn't corral the pass, I think that was good to see. And also, I think you're continuing to see him be more explosive and create more explosive plays now that the defense can't focus all their attention on him because you have all these healthy weapons back on the skill positions on your roster.
For sure. Yeah, and Rashee Rice was right there with almost 100 yards. I think he was really, really close. In a market that never sleeps, one name
rises above the rest. Lisa Miller from Dan Lynch Real Estate. Trusted by hundreds and recognized across the Midwest. She delivers results when it matters the most. With over 13 years of experience and licenses in both Kansas and Missouri, Lisa isn't just selling houses. She's helping you find a place to call home. Whether you are a first-time home buyer, looking to upsize, or selling your current home, Lisa makes the process smooth and stress-free. As a local expert passionate about building lasting relationships, she ensures her clients feel confident and satisfied every step of the way. Don't wait, your perfect home is just a call away. Contact Lisa today at 913-579-3246 or 913-369-3000 or visit lisamillersaleskc.com. Let Lisa Miller at Lynch Real Estate help you start your next exciting chapter. And let her know the beat of KC, Lucas Murphy, sent you her way.
Yeah, very quiet.
It's just
100 yards.
Do what?
Very quiet
Yeah.
performance, but I agree.
One of the things I highlighted in my video, and I'm going to go back and really look, is I'm intrigued. So when I watch the football game, I'm watching it on TV, but at the same time, I have the game cast going because I like to see kind of some of the descriptions. And it seemed like I really am intrigued by his yak, his yard after catch, because that's really what he's known for. And it seemed like he was getting a ton of that tonight. He would catch it, little dump offs or not necessarily receiver screens, but maybe like bubble screens in a way. And he was breaking off a lot of catches, like a lot of yards after that. So I'm intrigued to see his yak. Now, one of the things I kind of want to bleed a little bit into the Buffalo game to kind of get your thoughts. Obviously, this Kansas City Chiefs team, they aren't the best ranked when it comes defensively in stopping the run game. But when you go back and look at the people we've faced, they just have not erupted. Now, you faced a Najee Harris and an Omarion Hampton in game one, did not really erupt. And obviously, I'm not going to go in specific order, but you face guys like Saquon Barkley, Cam Skattebo, you face guys like Derrick Henry, and none of these guys that we're mentioning, and then obviously the Detroit Lions game and the dual-headed monster in the backfield with Gibbs and Montgomery. Now, Gibbs kind of had some moments, but they just aren't like erupting when that's really what they're schemed around. And so I'm intrigued we really shut the run game down tonight. It just was not there at all. And then obviously they started getting really behind and they had to go away from the run, but when they really start to eliminate this running attack, leading into the Buffalo game, we know what James Cook is going to do. James Cook absolutely erupted against the Carolina Panthers. Again, it is the Carolina Panthers, but the fact that he rushed over 200 yards, had multiple touchdowns, do you think the Kansas City Chiefs are staged and set up to stop a guy like James Cook? Because in my opinion, if they can find a way to eliminate or really limit James Cook, then they have a good advantage in this game. What are your thoughts on that?
I think they will be able to shut down James Cook with what they have. Yeah, I think the linebackers have quietly been really good for Kansas City this year. I mean, Nick Bolton was flying around tonight as well. I know people are going to pick on the pass coverage. I get it. But, I mean, he blew up some runs tonight. I thought he flew around for the most part. The part that scares me with James Cook is his receiving ability out of the backfield. And they're going to try to get him matched up against our linebackers in coverage. It's going to happen. And I'm worried, but I just, like you said, Lucas, I have confidence in this Chiefs defensive line that they will be able to corral the running backs for the Buffalo Bills because this team, they really gang tackle, and you look at the safeties as well. One of my criticisms of this secondary is that I've always felt like we had a bunch of box safeties and no free safeties. I still feel that way, but that means you have a bunch of guys that aren't afraid to come up in the box and make a tackle.
For sure. And I really tried to go back and I watched obviously the Atlanta Falcons and the Buffalo Bills. One of the big things that Buffalo did for whatever reason, they went away from James Cook in that second half, and then they obviously come out on the losing end. Now they reversed that. They said that their head coach really and Sean McDermott went in and really kind of studied what they did differently in the games prior up to that game. And one of the big things was leaning on James Cook. So I'll be curious if they try to do the same thing in this game. That's really why I wanted to talk about that. Now, really my final question about that Buffalo Bills game is, what are your expectations? I mean, obviously the Buffalo Bills to me are not as good of a team as they have been in years past. Their schedule hasn't really equated to the same as what the Chiefs have faced this year. And so I don't know that we've seen a full-on, really well-rounded Buffalo Bills team this year. What are your thoughts on this heading into this, game? Are the Kansas City Chiefs staged to really come out on top, or do you think it's going to be a down to the wire like it always seems to be?
Well, I think it'll be a close game. But you look at the Bills, they're going to be really shorthanded coming into this game. There was some breaking news from earlier today that the starting defensive tackle, Ed Oliver, torn bicep. That sounds like a season-ending injury. I know they haven't called it that yet. I'd be surprised if we see him again this year. But, they're going to be really shorthanded. And like you said, they don't look as strong as years past. But also the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a game that in the past they've approached yeah, we don't really care what happens. We'll let the Buffalo Bills have their regular season win, good for them. We're not going to empty the bag because we'll see them again later. And I understand why that's been the approach. Spags realizes, Andy realizes, we'll see this team again. No need to show our entire hand. But you've already used up kind of all the mulligans that you had this year. You can't really afford another loss before Thanksgiving. This game has to be a win for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're going to come out with their A game. I'm going to pick them to win because I think they have to. I think they need this game more than the Buffalo Bills do. And I think that hasn't really been the case the past few years. The Chiefs have kind of been able to afford to lose this game, not this time.
For sure. I think both teams, to be honest with you, this is almost like a desperation game because the Kansas City Chiefs, you nailed it. The Kansas City Chiefs have kind of backed themselves in a corner with not only the division, because obviously the Broncos and the Chargers are still having some success. The Broncos have kind of figured it out. Whatever happened in that late quarter where they scored 30-plus points, come back and win, and then they decimate the Cowboys. The Chargers are kind of getting things a little bit figured out again. The Raiders are down in the dumpster, but you're kind of already at a disadvantage in the AFC West. And then, you flip it over to the Buffalo Bills, and that Patriots team is actually playing really good football.
Yeah.
They're having some decent success. And so I think if the Buffalo Bills are looking to maintain and at least hang around and be considered for that division, they need to get this victory because it means just as much to them. So I really think that even though this is a regular season game, and really like you said, both teams expect to eventually see each other down the road, there's a lot of implications in this one. It's not only seeding, but potential playoff. If the Kansas City Chiefs are struggling to kind of get wins in these big games, they may not even make it. I mean, there's still that opportunity that could happen because they still have to face the Broncos twice. They still have to face the Chargers.
Yeah.
There's some still quality teams on this Kansas City Chiefs schedule, and the Buffalo Bills, they still have to play the Patriots. They still have to play some decent teams. So it'll be interesting, and I just really think there's a lot weighing on this game. So it's going to be one of those most watched football games. It's going to be very intense. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I really do believe that. And I think there's a chance it could be potentially a higher scoring game too. I'm curious to see what the over-under is for this one. But I think that'll be the video, Josh. I really appreciate you coming on. And I know it's late night. We're doing this after the Chiefs game. So I appreciate you coming on and giving me your time. Before we wrap this up, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me here on YouTube. Channel name is Show Me Football. Check out my work on showmefootball.com, and then make sure you follow the Twitter at ShowMeFB.
There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate all the support. You guys have been giving me a ton of love. It means a ton. Make sure you guys smash that subscribe button, smash that like button. Go follow Josh on Show Me Football. Give him some support as well. And I end every video the exact same way. Have a good day.